How's it going?
Okay. Hi, Glenn. Hey, Anthony. What's Travis up to?
Nice. Some nice out-of-sync keyboards.
I changed mine up.
Nice.
All right.
That was a stone cold groove.
I gotta fix my grill now.
That was some power tools going on.
Yeah, what was that? I couldn't see.
It was my drill.
Oh, I did. I was
like
thinking
a Billy Sheehan thing.
Yeah, I
was going to hear a musical instrument.
That was musical? What?
Yeah.
How was that not musical?
Play a musical instrument on the outro at the end of the show.
Okay, we'll see. That was musical.
Or we'll all get power tools.
Right. I wonder. I can't wait to watch later and find out how out of sync I was with the drums.
Right.
Towards the end, I actually started to play out of sync to think that maybe it would actually sync up.
Right.
That's what I was shooting for too. Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Outside the Inn, Travis Larson Band, Facebook Live, every Saturday night at 7:00. And we're expounding our technological abilities on a show-by-show basis here. Last night went very smooth. And so, we're trying to add more and more fun to each thing.
Nice job last night, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so the problem is I can only have one camera for a live feed that actually has good audio and is synced. But otherwise, I could have all kinds of cool stuff like the keyboard cam, get that keyboard cam going.
Wyatt Lund. Hey, how's it going, Wyatt?
Is that a tip jar you got there by the piano?
That is a tip jar over there by the piano. There's nothing in it.
I put some money in there.
Hey, Dale. Can you just kind of?
Yep.
Just a little bit. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
It's really weird how this program is completely different than what is centered on when I do Zoom. Trippy.
Right.
Yep.
Well,
everything is different. We are discovering it's just a big mush of mushiness.
Every platform is different. Every piece of gear interacts differently with each platform.
Yeah, and differently with how it claims to behave online when you order it.
You have to know every single freaking thing about everything as far as, I forgot to get my good chair. I'm sitting in a crappy chair. I might have to do that before the night is over, but I'll stick this out for a little while. But yeah, it's like every figuring out algorithms to make things post properly. Everybody noticed probably that we did our band video last week, and then I pulled it down from Facebook. The YouTube one was great. The Facebook one was as if it had been played live, like what we just did. So it was all out of sync, which it shouldn't have been. And that same video I uploaded to YouTube interacted differently with Facebook. So who knew? So I had to go in and research and figure out what numbers to type in to the WW and all that stuff. And I don't know.
When I saw you figure that out, I was like, because I know how hard you would have tried to get it right in the first place. And can't even imagine what was involved in getting it to go right.
Well, you realize that I pulled it down 5 days after I posted it.
Right. Yeah.
5 days.
Yeah. Of trying.
So, yes, Jen mentioned last night, Dale mentioned last night. Thank you so much to everybody that tuned in to the third installment of Live from the Treehouse, which is me actually playing live from the Treehouse, which is the Treehouse Studios I'm sitting in right now. And that is still posted. And there's a YouTube version up as well, although the Facebook version is better because, again, going back to our previous conversation, I noticed on the YouTube one, the further it got into the show, the more out of sync it got. Who knew? I don't understand. I don't understand any of it.
Figure
So,
it out.
but if you didn't get a chance to see that, go check it out. It's got some really old stuff in it. I just got a nice message from Jeff Burdick on Facebook that said he really appreciated me kind of digging deep in the well there and doing some stuff that I wouldn't normally do. So it's fun. Hey Dale, I don't think you saw it, but I played Window Falls last night, and I did it without the band. I just did it with a looper because we don't have any studio tracks for that. It was recorded back on reel-to-reel tape, you know.
Are you out of your mind?
And so, but here's what happened.
Holy
Though.
crap.
It had been so long since I played it. I never once played the melody. I realized after the fact, I played Window Falls. It was about, I don't know, 2.5, 3 minutes long. I never played the melody. I played the riff, and then I played the little classical descending, ascending part.
Is that
that song? You know the one I'm talking about?
I think so. I'm not even sure I can think of the right song.
It's a nylon string song, and you played some percussion on it. But I don't have anything hooked up here where you can hear this guitar, but maybe acoustically, it should work fantastic if I just hold it up to the microphone
now and just pretend it was last night.
Go on, do it.
Can you hear that?
Good. Oh yeah,
that one. Yeah. So I never once played this. Which is the whole melody of the song, right?
We were all humming it in our heads.
I never played it. I soloed over the song for like 2 minutes, but I never played the melody of the song.
Yeah, balls the size of Wisconsin just for trying it.
All right. So anyway, that happened. Let's take a look at the feed here just for a second. Larry Dickey, how you doing? 2 nights in a row, Larry. Tim Brown. So Tim Brown lives near us. He's a fan here on the Central Coast of California, and I ride my mountain bike every day. And so the other day, I rode by Jennifer's house, and we were standing out in front of her house, social distance, responsible talking. And I said, I got to get out of here, or else Tim Brown's going to see both of us. So here's the Tim will get a kick out of this. So here's the punchline. When I was coming back by your house on my bike, Tim Brown stopped me.
Hey, nice.
He comes rolling up in his car next to me. I'm on my bike, and he rolls up in his car next to me, and he's like, "Hey." So
Larry pointed out that my hair's looking full.
Yeah, it's. I was gonna say you look like. What was that guy's name again?
It's going to be some reference that's...
Who was the guy that played Shep? What's that guy's name?
Oh, Isaac Hayes?
Oh, Isaac. Yeah, you look like Isaac Hayes' sidekick in Escape from New York, the guy whose hair was standing up about 6 inches.
Wow. I don't know if I got that one. Yeah. Right. Okay.
No, but there's other comparisons. Wait, show them the one that you were showing us.
Yeah, you can show that.
I made
We're doing a special new segment, and it's called Show and Tell.
And I didn't have anything to show and tell. I didn't know about this segment, but I decided to just quickly feature my inspiration for hair these days.
Nice.
Because you got to have faith, you know?
Right? Yep. Anyway. Good looking man. I'm just saying my hair looks like his. That's all.
So just to catch up a bit before I get into this feed too much. Yeah, where have you been, Dale? I have not heard hide or hair of you since the last time we did this.
You know, it seems
completely off the radar.
Yeah, but it doesn't. I don't know. I've been trying to prepare for a couple things that haven't really shown up yet. One is, as we start hearing rumors about going back to phases of normalcy, I'm anticipating how weird it's going to be. Right now, I'm just in one room doing online lessons with all my students, but pretty soon, eventually, I imagine some people will be coming in and some people won't want to. So I have to figure out how to quickly adjust from in-person to online. And my head's been exploding on that one. And then, and just, I guess, trying to catch up with life. I don't know. How about you guys? What you guys been up to?
Go ahead, Jen. You talk first because I got plenty of material.
Travis, Kip, and I socially distanced and cut a tree down today. So that happened.
Wow.
Yeah. So I smell so bad right now. Oh my God.
Like
Yeah,
a
we had
tree?
a chainsaw.
Yeah, we were chainsawing and such. It was
I
good.
don't know that.
Jennifer had a tree that was going like way over into the neighbor's property. Like it was like a whole nother tree into their property. And
I don't
so
know if I approve of this.
Well, Kip did most of the
he did the
cutting,
cutting
so-
and we did the heavy lifting. That's the honest truth.
Right.
Okay.
And he said that.
Not that Kip should, sacrifice his fingers or limbs either, but he was willing. So
Kip said, you did the hardest part. He goes, he's just there with he had one of those little chainsaws on a pole. So like he's having fun,
Pole saw.
Okay, yeah. Yes.
Pole saw.
Okay.
So that's what we did today. And then the week, here's my story of the week, which leads into last night's live show. Last week we were talking about cables. USB cables. This is like all the little crap that you got to figure out for this stuff. So the roll and go mixer, we're going to get into it now. The roll and go mixer comes with factory cables specific to roll and go mixer, right? They say quite clearly all over the manual, you cannot use any other USB cables or it won't work properly. So of course, I'm going to try and use other USB cables because the ones that come with the Go Mixer are like 1 foot and 4 inches long, I believe. So I started, I used another USB cable that also allowed me to power the Go Mixer and not run off batteries, which would eventually die. It's all very complicated. This is to do the live stream concert last night, just to reiterate. And so in using a longer USB cable, you get ticks and pops in the audio, much like you would with like a bad digital connection. And so what I did the last 2 times that I did the live feed show is right before the show, I would unplug the longer USB cable that allowed me to power things, and I would plug in this little short one. And I'd run on batteries for the show, which would probably last a couple hours. And I haven't played more than an hour or an hour and a half. So I've been researching, trying to find out how you get one of these cables to go. I needed one that specifically went to USB-C, and the Roll and Go Mixer did not come with this, but the Go Mixer Pro does. But I don't have a Go Mixer Pro, I have a Go Mixer. But internally, they're the exact same thing. I'm just telling the people out there, if you're a musician watching this, trying to do webcast music, they're the exact same thing. One of them has phantom power for an XLR. That's the added addition. But as far as the internal stuff, they'll tell you there that they're different, but they're not different. I'm saying they're not different. So after digging and massive research, I found out that, I experimented by ordering 3 $7 USB cables from Amazon. And they, of course, all showed up an hour before yesterday's live feed when everything was already set up and sound checked and ready to go. So right before I was going to get in the shower and try and look pretty, then I was like all of a sudden just rifling through stuff like, okay, and I had to physically unbolt things and move them because these cables were like 3 inches and 6 inches, whereas the old setup, I had at least 1 foot and 4 inches to deal with. I know it's ridiculous, but anyway. So that's what I've been doing this week, Dale, is buying $7 cables from Amazon, trying to make the live feed concerts work seamlessly so that we had good audio and good camera. And I think we have finally gotten there. And now I'm excited to now I feel like I just should stream 24 hours a day. I'm not going to, but I feel like now that it works, I should.
Just set up a camera in the house,
Right.
No playing.
So
and like I did before, I'm just going to jump in and say, the amount of crap that you waded through to figure that stuff out is way gnarlier than what you just described. And the stonewalling of answers that you get and the lack of information and the vacuum of, yeah. So, it's crazy. I don't know how you figure that out. Like, I don't even know how to explain how crazy it is that you figured that out.
You basically had to research stuff they don't want you to know. I guess that's kind of the point. I don't want to get too deep into it and get in trouble, but they don't want you to know these things.
Well, there was a point.
I'm telling you that if you get a roll-and-to-go mixer and you need to make it work with an iPad Pro, which has a USB-C cable that they do not send you with the original Go mixer, if you need to make it work, you can get $7 cable off Amazon. Just make sure that it's shorter than 1 foot and 4 inches, and you will not get pops and takes.
You
so
should
that is
post
my gift.
the link later.
That's my gift to the world. Yeah, post the link to the cable. Mm-hmm. It's on a computer that's being used for a completely different thing, and there's no way I could get to it. It's being used for this.
I did say later. Just mentioning.
Oh, later. Gotcha.
You figured out how long a physical conductor has to be to transmit digital information. It's insane.
Without popping on a specific mixer.
Yeah. I will say this. I love Roland products. We rely on their samplers for some samples and stuff in our show. But there was a point in time we did 1 million in-store clinics, and guitar centers all over, and then Sam Ash's all over the country. And it would have made sense to be endorsing their products, but they don't really have the same type of artist endorsing. So the problem, no problem. I'm not saying I deserve that or nothing, but the problem is when somebody's not affiliated with your company, and then you have this happen, maybe those people get on a stream and talk shit about your stuff. Anyway, never mind.
On a side note.
Wait, I need to say something.
Go ahead.
I'm going to mix it up. Go ahead.
Werner said earlier in a comment, tree murderer. And I would just like to say that during the whole process today, I was apologizing profusely to this tree. You can ask the guys. And it sucked. I felt awful about it. So I'm just saying.
I'm sorry.
But let me say this. The tasty burgers and the tasty ribs and whatnot that we can put over that tree as it gives itself back to the earth in the fire
Well, what
pit.
I'm going to do is chip it up and use it as mulch and spread it back into the earth. So it will have a second life of some kind. But I felt awful about it. I feel awful about all that stuff.
The logs are going to end up in a fire pit. And we're going to be cooking hot dogs and marshmallows and stuff over it over the summer. Right?
Yes. Okay. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. not to change the subject from, digital genius by Travis, but
My friend just sent me this picture to add to the George Michael comparison. I think this is like
no.
Oh, that's one of the Hardy Boys.
That's Parker Stevenson.
Right?
Wow. That's
beautiful.
Thank you, Stephanie.
All right. Well, let's take some questions. And I do want to say real quick, and rather than having a surprise special guest next week, right when we came on the air, we got an email confirming next week's guest, and he's so special that we're going to actually let you know who it is at the end of tonight. So he's very, very special. And it was funny because I had a few friends that we were kind of putting that out to. And so it was like, is anybody going to get back before tonight? So we know what's happening next week. And he got back like 5 minutes still. And he goes, I'm so glad I got back to you in time for you to promote it tonight. So, okay. So
you're not going to tell us?
We're going to wait till the end.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. You got it.
Just like I said, later.
Like last week we showed the video at the end. This won't be that exciting, but and we're going to do more of the band compilation performance videos too. One of us needs to finish his recording.
That's not me.
2 of us are ready. One of us needs to get his part of the song ready.
I feel like I didn't talk enough about how busy I've been this week.
Did I say his part of the song?
Yeah, I guess that narrows it down a touch.
I got to tell you this too, Dale. Jerry texted me last night. Jerry is one of our fans up in the Bay Area. For those of you keeping track, and he doesn't have a Facebook account, so you don't see him commenting on here, but he does watch these. And
oh, nice.
He said he liked that version of Outside the Inn better than the album version enough to where he was like, we should use that for the intro to this show.
Oh, nice.
And he's like, it has a little extra something, like a little extra juice. And I said, well, I made 2 mistakes in it. And he goes, no, there's a little extra juice going on there. I said, well, it's a slightly fatter version, but it was funny how, Jerry was saying, we should use that version, not the version from the record that we're using.
Right.
No, the version where we were all like quarantined and sending it via email.
I was also a slightly fatter version than on the album.
That's right there. That's an old Mike Keneally joke. I had Mike Keneally's soap scum remover VHS back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And he said this video was filmed in VF. Mike Keneally was very fat during the making of this video.
Nice.
The only reason I would ever say that is because it was his product.
Yeah. When I bought the shirt on tour, it fit me.
Yeah. So
yes, but the saying still fits you.
Right. Thank you.
There you go.
Right. So here's a question. Sam Kovar says, Travis, Jennifer, and Mr. Moon, how old was everyone when they started playing their professional instruments? Travis, what was your schooling, if any, regarding the guitar? Well, I'll start with my 2 instruments. I started playing piano when I was about 9 or 10 years old. I had a upright piano in my house, kind of like the one behind Jen that's slowly falling apart. And
it's more wood I'm murdering.
Murder would be a great that would be like a something Beller would be involved with. You like murder wood.
Right.
Like that would be something
wood.
Death Clock would put out,
Totally. Perfect.
So I started playing piano when I was about 9 or 10 and just kind of picking out TV show themes. Like the first thing I did was I picked out the theme to MASH, I think. And then, Hill Street Blues, maybe later, like some stuff like that. Although I was older when Hill Street Blues came out, but MASH was the first one I remember. And, Taxi, that was another one that I was learning on piano. And then I got my first guitar when I think I was about 15. And 14 or 15. And shortly thereafter, like less than a year after, I met Jennifer.
True.
So when did you start playing, Jen?
It was very similar, except for that I started out on drums. I got a drum set when I was probably 13, and then an acoustic guitar shortly thereafter because drums didn't sound good and they were just really complicated to set up and stuff, right, Dale? And
true story.
Then yes, I started playing bass when I was 15, and I moved and met Travis. So yeah, we basically started playing right around the same time together. Although we didn't play together for a few years, but yeah, 15 for bass.
Yeah,
I started when I was 10. When I was in 5th grade, they send you home with a note saying your child has an opportunity to play an instrument, and I was way too shy. Yes, right. I was way too introverted, and I would never have and I fought it. But my mom, this is a pretty good approach, I got to say. She was like, "You're going to try something, and you don't have to like it, and you don't even have to stick with it, but you're going to try it." So I was drawn to drums because immediately I knew it would be drums, but I really just didn't want. I just wanted to avoid any attention period. But so yeah, I started when I was 10, and because my mom made me.
Nice. My mom made me.
Yeah. Sam asked if I had any schooling. I won't get too far into the story because we've told it on previous podcasts, but I don't have any formal guitar schooling. I had some lessons with a private teacher on piano that my dad, he was a guy that worked as an architect He had just graduated Cal Poly University and worked for my dad, but he was also a local jazz keyboardist with a local, like kind of all around band called San Luis Jazz, which was a band that played, every like corporate functions and weddings and those kind of things. But he was the only formal training I've ever had at all was this guy named George Garcia. And then on guitar, um, when I got a guitar, I didn't even know what distortion or gain was. I didn't know anything about amps. And we mentioned before that I discovered distortion by overdriving the guitar, plugging it into a cassette recorder, and realized, oh, that's what that is. Because I didn't understand how people got the guitar to squeal and all that kind of stuff. So
I love that you discovered that yourself. Even you didn't invent it, but you discovered it for yourself.
It's ridiculous. I did not even understand what a whammy bar was. Like I saw guys, like I say, you used to see Eddie Van Halen doing those high pitched squeals, and it almost sounds like the guitar is whistling and diving and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I thought that you put the bar under the strings and pulled up on it or something. I didn't understand that it actually moved the bridge. That's how little I understood about guitar when I got one. But I didn't start on acoustic guitar really like a lot of people. I started with an electric guitar with a whammy bar. However big of a piece of crap it was from the Sears catalog, it was still an electric guitar with a whammy bar. And so I was like, I don't understand how these things work. And there was nobody to tell me. There was no YouTube. There was no internet. I didn't understand anything I didn't know about DCI videos or any of that stuff back then. I didn't, I was literally a kid in the country like Jen, that didn't know anything about anything. And it was like a Rush song, it was like we were like finding this thing in the dirt and slowly chipping away at it. And like, I learned how to tune my guitar on my last piano lesson with George Garcia. I said, how do you tune a guitar? And he knew we were done at that point. That was kind of the last lesson. He was like, yeah, I think there's not much more I can tell you. Because I wasn't really digging into a lot of the stuff. I was definitely the kid that was kind of, I was trying to learn to read, but my focus wasn't great. And so I was learning everything by ear and kind of learning to read it, but mostly by ear. And if I couldn't read something or figure it out, or I lost patience, I would just do it by ear.
I got news for you. That's how everybody does it.
Right. There's a few guys that we know that don't, but they're like,
that's because their teacher stopped them. Like everybody figures things out by ear and doesn't really read what's on the page unless you make them pull it off the page. Yeah.
I would bet, and I don't know this for a fact, but I bet you if you talk to Tony, McAlpine, he probably learned how to read and all that stuff right from the get-go because he's just ridiculously accomplished,
But a classical piano player is going to make you do that. I mean, teacher. Yeah.
Jen, question for you. This is from Wayne. As a bass player, I have to know how you achieve your stock tone. It's so crisp and chunky. Please enlighten me. It's those huge meaty fingers.
What?
It's those huge meaty fingers.
Oh yeah. Yes, the chunky part comes from my huge meaty fingers. I'd have to attribute most of that to the Music Man instruments. I think they just inherently have that crisp, chunky thing. I mean, depending on which one. I mean, the Sterling and the bongo do sound different, and so depending on the kind of chunk you're looking for, that's the instrument that is chosen. I do run a certain amount of EQing on my effects or just my preamp. So I don't know. I mean, that's like a tone that Travis helped me a lot, just trying to go through and find what I heard in my head, and we went through all of that a long time ago, and then I haven't really messed with it since. I'm not really a person to mess around with things once I'm happy with them, so we got a thing and kind of been sticking with it. And the Mark bass amps and cabs too, I think lend the crisp factor to the tone. Everything is really
They don't color it.
transparent
Yeah.
and not, yes, it's very non-colored. So I blend it to just the gear, quite honestly, you know. And I suppose there's a little bit of to do with the finger stuff, but you know,
Well, I'll interject and say
well,
part of it, there's two things. The physical part is that Jen does have very skinny fingers. And so she does tend to have a really crisp sound physically, because it's almost like even when she's not playing with a pick, it's almost like playing a pick without the annoying, like point on it, you know, like you have a less woofy tone than many bass players. Like you're not going to sound like Phil Bino playing the bass, like a guy with big meaty fingers that's super strong, but you do have a clarity to your playing that a lot of people don't have. And it's based on just the natural way your fingers touch the strings. And the other thing is, when we worked on all those tones, we work around each other. A lot of people don't, we've talked about this before. As a band, we sonically work around each other. And that's why when we go out with other bands always start sonically with what comes off the stage. And it's only up to a really great sound man to translate that. And again, be transparent if they can with whatever quality of gear they have in their ear, and trying not to mess it up. And so the thing is that when you start with something that's really, really notched, frequencies are notched around each other, so we all fit very well. The mix is very important to us. The band physically in a room sounds very, very clean. It's funny, we can go into our rehearsal room, and because of the ungodly decibels, it sounds horrible to us, and we'll stuff earplugs all the way in. But if you run a tape recorder on it and you listen to it later, it sounds like the record. You always go, wow, it sounds like we're playing the record on a PA in a room. So you hear the room, but like it's hard for us as close to it to even hear how much we've worked on it and how well it translates. But it's a lot of thought goes into that as a band. And like Jennifer said, we haven't touched it in years. I haven't touched my sound in probably 10 years. There's specific effects and things that we work on for specific songs on new albums, but tonally, the tones generally stay the same. On an album, it's a whole different story, but I'm talking about live.
Yeah.
On an album,
the album, we play around a little more.
Completely. Yeah. I'll use a different guitar and a different amp and a different sound on every single rhythm track or harmony and different instruments and all that stuff. But the lead tone is always my lead tone. And Jen's bass tone always starts with her bass tone. And then whatever we need to do frequency wise to make that work as an entire mix. And sometimes
on an album, I just plug direct. It's just the instrument going in. So.
Right.
I remember, I'm only saying this because everybody listening does know it's your technique and your ear and all the sensitivity that goes into the playing. But I do remember, speaking of your fingers and the instrument, I remember when you started playing Music Man and thinking it was a really good match for you. Like I remember how there is a certain amount, overwhelmingly your sound is yours, and there's a certain amount that the instrument provided that you were talking about. And I liked that too. I liked when you switched to Music Man. It suited you well, I thought.
Yeah. I thought so too. And even just somehow, aside from tone, but just the actual being able to play the instrument, I was able to, just manage the piece of wood again easily,
right.
better.
Yep.
So one of the things about that is that the Music Mans, we've mentioned this before, but the balance between fingerstyle and slapping is much more even than it is on a lot of basses. Like you don't have to correct so much.
Yeah, at least in my experience, it's not like I've played every bass on the planet, but in my experience, they're just very across the board balanced, between all the different styles. Like, because I guess, not every bass player is going from fingerstyle to slap style to tapping, even in one song, but you have to have an instrument that can, manage all that well,
right,
as opposed to this instrument that does one thing well. So,
I saw some people mentioning slapping. Joseph says slapaliciousness, and that's because the slapping on the tune that we posted last week is so great. And so I'm going to post that real quick here for anyone that missed it. There's a link I just posted to the YouTube video we did last week as a band, and we're going to work on more of those as soon as one of us has time. But all right,
It's
what
so
else
busy,
we got here?
Travis.
Let me throw a Who's the Man out there.
Oh no.
This is one that, this is an unexpected one. Johnny Winter or Edgar Winter?
I feel like when I used to play up in Humboldt County and did a lot of country rock gigs, I played more Johnny Winter. And it seems like Edgar Winter was a little, I don't even know if it's fair to say, but I was a lot more aware of his stuff later, which I know.
Somebody's mic is freaking out.
Me? Is it me?
I don't know. Could be. You're fine now. It was just it sounded like a connection.
Yeah, I heard that.
Well, so Edgar Winter was Frankenstein, right?
Yeah, I think
so. There's that.
But, yeah, there's that.
But the thing is, I'm really naive, and I'm going to admit that fully, because people are going to get mad at me. But that's all I know from him.
I'm sort of that way too.
But Johnny Winter, Johnny Winter's legendary blues guitarist, and but I mean,
I'm literally looking stuff up to see if it hits.
I'm going to say Johnny. I'm just going to go to Johnny, even though maybe not as big a hits.
Yes, me too. I tell you, you guys are getting so good at the "Who's the Man" stuff that it's kind of hard all the time.
Hey, Jen, your mic's not working. Maybe it's you.
Oh yeah, I don't hear you.
Hello?
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. It was you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I saw you set your glass to the right, and all of a sudden everything crackled, and then you went dead. So
that sounds awful.
Yeah, I saw a question earlier that I would be happy to answer it, and you guys could chime in on this. Amulin said, Dale, since you mentioned your lack of desire for attention in the beginning, as someone who struggles with stage fright myself, how exactly did you overcome it? And my answer is, I'm not sure I overcame it. I just learned to deal with it. You always think when you're nervous at first, you'll get more experience and that you'll quit being nervous because you'll just be so confident. But I've just learned about myself that I'm one of these, I call it an adrenaline type. And even if I'm not nervous, my body dumps so much adrenaline in me when I start a show that I have to just weather that initial shock. And then, so my answer, like students ask me all the time if I still get nervous. And my answer is yes, but I just don't care anymore, which is a weird answer. But when you don't have that much experience and you get nervous, I used to just panic and go, now I'm feeling all weird and I'm just it's gonna blow up in my face. And now I just go, yeah, this happens all the time, and I managed to get through it. And that's an interesting piece of advice I give students all the time. Like, everybody doesn't want to do we'll do these sort of we call them spotlights. They're like recitals, but everybody's too nervous, and they all think if they wait and put it off later, they won't be nervous. And my advice is always, if you're going to freak out, you're going to freak out. You might as well find out who you are, and then and you could practice more and more and more, and you're still going to have to learn to deal with being on stage. And so, and there was something else I was going to say. I've actually had a weird experience where practicing more and being more prepared almost makes me more uptight because I'm trying to keep track of everything, So, so my answer is really just that I've never learned to really be an extrovert. I've just learned that it's going to be okay and not to take myself too seriously. But different people are different. Oh, I'm going to say one more thing. So when I was in college studying kinesiology, one of the things you learn about with athletes is excitatory types. And what it means is, some athletes go out there and they're just jacked and they're almost too excited and they have to calm down. And some people get out there and they're too calm and they don't really get into it until they get an elbow in the face or something like that. Then it gets their adrenaline up. And then there's some people just kind of in the middle. And I'm definitely the person who's too excited and it gets in my way until the adrenaline fades.
Right.
So learning those types of things, just literally learning about my physiology, has helped me understand that it'll be okay. And I'm going to be uptight for a couple songs and then it'll start being okay. So anyway, that's my long-winded answer. Thanks for asking.
Well, interestingly, and Dale and I have talked about this a few times because he teases me sometimes because I'm so mellow going into high stress situations.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I'm very much like Dale, and what I've done is fool my brain in rehearsals. Like I try and imagine audiences in front of me to the point where I get anxiety over it constantly. Like so I try and give myself the anxiety to begin with, so I get used to playing with anxiety. And then I've gotten really good at that to the point where now I can get pretty used to it. And the crazier the stuff is, the more I calm down, but the thing is, with, like, for instance, with the live stream shows like last night, there's no way to prepare, like, generally speaking, like a tour where you go out and, you have 2-3 nights and you start settling in. Those things, we're absolutely off the road, and I am in no mental shape to be on the spot. And then all of a sudden you're on the spot digitally and you're not seeing anyone's faces, and there's 1,000 people or more watching. And that's totally weird. Like it's great because I totally appreciate everybody tuning in, and the like I've mentioned before, the warm camaraderie amongst our friends and people that follow this band is ridiculous, and I love you guys for it. But it's still freaky to be a guy in a room looking at a camera and knowing you're watching but not seeing your faces,
Yeah.
Like we need like the biggest Zoom screen ever where I just
see all the little squares of people. That would be awesome.
Yeah. John Smith just chimed in. What about Shelley Winter or Jonathan Winters?
She was in the Poseidon Adventure, right?
Yeah.
Jonathan.
I will say
Here's
Jen,
a question.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna throw that out to you, Jen, if you wanted to answer do you battle stage anxiety and how and stuff?
Yes, very much. But I don't know. I think I don't know. I guess I feel sort of the same way. I'm definitely not an extrovert. I have a really hard time being on stage and being watched, I guess, just that fishbowl kind of thing. And I'm not sure how I get through it or get over it. I'm a little more short attention span than everybody else, so I like dart around. I'm like, oh. But I have had serious adrenaline overload, like Dale's talking about, to the point where it almost has made me sick, and I've had to run around the block and do jumping jacks and push-ups and stuff to try to just burn that stuff out of my system, because it makes your muscles freeze up and do all kinds of weird things, and you cannot function. And that's happened to me many times. So I don't know. Nowadays, I think that I have adrenaline fatigue, so I don't get that as much.
We've talked about how much when we have something important coming up as a band, we like to work ourselves to where we're just exhausted and frazzled. So you just your adrenals can't go too overboard.
Yeah. They don't squirt it out anymore because they're just done, which is not a healthy thing at all. But I think I'm at that point now. I'm just like, whatever. Let's have a good time. That's sort of where my head is at these days. But
what's interesting too is
depends.
Jen has just historically always been the kind of most struggling one in that regard, at least obviously, as far as we're going to walk out and do something big. And she always, in those instances, usually anyway, not always, but usually plays better than we do. And I'll be completely comfortable and I'll play sometimes like crap and she'll play great, and I do tend to, I play better when like I'm in the more leisurely, easygoing gigs, and Jen tends to usually play really good when it matters. So
that is an interesting point. I've gone through that it's interesting to have a bunch of students and watch them perform when they're not used to performing in public. Some people get really nervous and it dismantles them, and some people get really nervous and they just respond to it, and I just don't worry about them. And then
Yeah. It's I'd say that has happened more often than not, but there's been a few times where I got totally dismantled, and I learned a lot from those experiences. In particular, the bass player day live or whatever that was called, Travis.
Oh
where
yeah,
I had to get up
bass
on
player live.
Bass Player Live. I had to get up on stage with Tony Levin and Sterling Ball and who else was
Carl Verheine's bass player.
Yeah, Dave Murata. And oh my God, I
And
was
then,
so nervous and I lost it.
This actually was a good growing experience because it forced you into making yourself more prepared for those kind of things.
Yes, correct.
But but those, it sucks when you go into those things not with that mindset. You should always have, like, so after that, you've kind of, when you started doing kind of solo looping songs and stuff, it was like you need 10 to 15 minutes where if somebody needs you to do something, you need to be able to do it, right?
Yeah,
that was kind of part of that, right? But the thing is about that whole thing, when you did that, they got up there and then they all looked at you and said, "What should we jam on, Jen?" And it was like, Jen, lead the jam. Now, Jen is the most unlead the jam person of all time. She's certainly gotten better at it, but, and similar, Geddy Lee, guys like that are no different. They do what they do within their context of what they do. And there's things in their wheelhouse, but they're not guys that get up at jams and just know every song or every groove and just wing it, And so, what was great about that night, though, and another lesson learned, was that during that jam, so she started playing Chameleon. Tony Levin had the stick fingers. He starts playing along with her and supporting her with like a groove. Like he was starting to do something up top where he was playing some cool chordal rhythmic thing. And then all the other guys started jumping in and Dave Murata started playing the melody. But what was great was when they pointed at Tony to take a solo, he was absolutely, nope.
Yeah.
That's not Tony's deal, right? Like he will take a solo, but that was not the time he wanted to. And so there was a lesson learned there too, where you kind of do what you do and you hold your own and you're good with it.
Yeah.
It's like getting Joe Satriani up with somebody like Greg Howe to play crazy 7/8 fusion. Now, I'm not saying Joe couldn't hang, but I'm saying, he may bow out of something like that, just knowing this is not my strong point. I mean, I'm not trying to put anything on anybody. I'm just saying that's an example of the kind of thinking where part of being a professional is also knowing your strengths and using them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I mean, not that growing doesn't need to occur sometimes. And that was an example of that. The other story of that was that Tal Wickenfeld was right across the hall. And so it was like, Jen was like the other chick bass player. And it was like, there was just a strange dynamic at that whole thing of like, like Tal got really popular. So let's get another one of those.
And then you got to represent half the speech.
That was one of those when Tal was like 4 years old.
Yeah, I could be your grandmother for crying out. Scott wants to know how we feel about people videotaping as it shows with cell phones and the like. And he's not asking for a friend, he's asking for himself. That was
nice.
funny.
I like it. I own it.
If I don't dig it, but if you're keeping it for yourself, I will tolerate it. That's my stance.
It's fair.
Yeah.
It's nice not to have stuff posted when you're trying to put your own stuff out that you've had quality control over. And the other part is, it's funny how ubiquitous it is. Like everywhere, like at NAMM, everybody's got their phone. And that's great if they're going to go back over there. I mean, I'm not saying this to Scott, but it's something I always think of while I'm on stage. Like, what percentage of those people revisit that and experience it? It's cool if they have this thing for a lifetime and they're always going to love it. But I feel like nobody goes back over it and then they didn't experience it in the moment. And
Yeah, the moment
Right.
is far more powerful. And I tend to disagree a little bit with photos. I think people do go back and look at photos of an
that's a good point.
experience.
I
But
agree with you.
video, no, you never go back and look at, or it's rare that you go back and look at video. And the present moment is far more powerful than any video you're going to watch later on your phone. But a photo of that moment, I think, can be powerful.
As a guy that doesn't dig it, I will argue as a super fan, depends on what it is. But if you've got a steady cam that's shot from the board and that's the only footage of an era of something, like Steve Morse Band is a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
Like those guys have barely documented anything in their entire career. And so you're left with like board tapes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's true, yeah.
And I was going to say an example. We had Dave Martone on a couple shows ago, and I have the greatest ever board camera of him on the Digitruck with us. And it's like, I do put that on sometimes. Number one, it sounds phenomenal because we had like 4 subs and the sound was so overwhelming that on the camera, it actually sounds really, really good. There's bass and bottom end and stuff, but he was so entertaining that day. And it just makes me laugh. Like there's a point where he finishes a song that's so speed metal, double bass, double kick, blah, 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 and he stops, and then you hear a car alarm in the parking lot going, and it puts you right there. It's like I remember that day like it was right now, just sitting there laughing my ass off in a parking lot watching Dave play for like a dozen people maybe.
Yeah.
It was just those are like great times in a way that, horrific times career-wise, but such great times as far as just the camaraderie and the ridiculousness of the situation. And then we're going to barbecue after the show in the parking lot of a Guitar Center.
I remember that. And by sheer coincidence, a friend and ex-student of mine at that mall that Dave was performing at managed the Hot Topics. And I remember going, do you have any returned, or like, do you have some underwear that we could throw at him from the shop? I can't remember if she got any or not, but
I need some returned underwear for my kick drum.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably on Trav's video if it happened. So
I can't.
This is one of the few bands that has never ever had any underwear thrown at them. You should have a whole kick drum full of underwear if you were in a good band,
Yeah, well.
Not even men's underwear. What?
Right?
Dang.
Here's a quick gear question from Wes from quite a bit ago. What DAW do you use at home? I'm using Pro Tools 8, I think, which is the one.
Pro Tools BC.
Yeah, it's old Pro Tools. We're still you have to pay Pro Tools to use your own studio Pro Tools. So we're just sticking with an old version because they've made it now you have to subscribe, and screw that. So I don't want to have to subscribe to use something that I've already owned. And I'm at home. I'm just using a little M box. This will be my show and tell portion, Jen.
Okay. Neat.
So I've got, we talked the other night. People were, last night when I did the show, somebody asked to talk about the studio a little bit. The home recording studio is basically just a converted garage with a room built within a room. So it's soundproofed enough so Jen could come over and play the drums. Dale's not allowed to, but Jen does. So there's me. There's my keyboard rig back there. I don't want to mess with the camera angles, but there's a drum set, which you guys have seen before. Actually, I can do that from here. So if I grab this camera, there's a drum set over there. That's Jennifer's drum set, actually.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Well, it's all Dale symbols.
Dale doesn't even play on the records anymore, actually. Jen, it's like how, Michael Anthony was supposedly under Van Halen's thumb and he didn't play any of those parts. That's the way it's like in our band with Dale.
I thought we were going to share that until later.
That's all bullshit.
Travis, you weren't supposed to say anything.
Right.
I'm going to apologize to you guys in advance for all the male listeners saying they will throw their underwear next time.
I know. Right? I'm so excited about this.
Well,
I've
the
been
last
seeing
time we
that.
had a good talk like that, Jennifer got a bunch of ass gaskets for bad bathrooms. So
True, yeah.
Yeah.
maybe
did.
Dale and I can get some free panties.
No,
I'm
these are the
trying to hook
dudes.
you guys up right now.
Panties.
These are the guys offering.
I know, but I need some new underwear.
Okay, yeah, right.
I'm a
Yeah.
32.
Yeah, who's to say they're throwing them for me anyways?
Right. Swag is swag.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to do my show and tell really quick. We had a question from Anthony a while ago too, asking about the formula on the TLB logo.
Yes, I was just going to read that question.
Okay, good. The 20-year anniversary one, which will lead me into my show and tell, which I'll try to make it quick. That is actually, that's for the 20-year anniversary. We were trying to sort of visit the original TLB logo, wanted to revamp it a little bit, and that is called the Moore's Circle, and it basically is a visual representation of stress. And Dale probably could elaborate on this a little more with regards to, it's an engineering formula, I believe, and I cannot even recall how I came across it. Sometimes when I'm working on something, I just search and search and search and look and think and and then I end up, it's like a rabbit hole for me, and then I end up at this place and I'm like, oh my god, it's the meaning of stress. And it looked cool, and it had a little, what looked to me like a 20 in there for the 20-year anniversary, but it turns out it's actually a, what the hell is that little thing with the
Capital Theta, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dale.
Here,
I was
I
like,
can show it real quick while you're talking.
Greek
I was
letters
like,
are
well,
often used in physics.
Visually it looks like a 20 to me, and as a graphic design person, that's kind of all you need sometimes. So yes, that is the Moore's Circle, and it is a visual representation of stress, and that was sort of just kind of a funny way of saying, yeah, we've been in the van together for 20 years. So anyways, so my show and tell, we were talking last week about the album artwork, and I was talking about Shift, and I so for every record I have a notebook, and I am sort of the notes keeper for everything, and I jot everything down, things people say, ideas about this and that. So I brought a couple of I'll just show one, but album notebooks, and I'll grab the Shift one because that's what we were talking about last week. I did grab the SoundMind one, and I found the old SoundMind Rorschach original, little painting things. But so it's just a notebook, and in it I have, I don't know if you guys can all see this, but
just hold it really still.
I'm trying to find a place to put it. Basically, like, I do all of the song breakdowns, little notes, also working titles, and like titles we were thinking about, like right here, The Drift. Some of the song title ideas were Carry On, Somehow, Time and Pressure, and then I have all this stuff written down. Double Tap. What's some of the other fun ones? Anyways, it's fun to look back at this stuff. Like, here's Bright Eyes. Some of the possible album titles were Larkspur. That must have been a way Jen thing. Forget Me Not, because it's a type of flower. Above, Below, Dead Ringer, Three Blind Cats. I mean, some of the stuff that happens in the studio. So anyways, there's that part of it. And then I have, I don't even know if you guys can see this, the album artwork, but then, and all the different possible, oh my god, I just licked my finger, I'm gonna die. Yeah. So we were talking about how Shift started out as Above, Below, and I happened to find this in a notebook that actually Travis is above the below. Above the below. I'm like, okay.
Hold that one up for a second so it focuses in on it and we can see it.
Like your left,
just closer to the camera. As close.
Clock your mic. There you go. Nice.
Thank you.
Cool. I will say that oh, go ahead.
Oh, that's a cool one.
Right.
I mean, there's gobs of them, gobs and gobs and gobs of ideas. Oh, we were talking about calling the album Transient. Do you remember that?
Nope.
Maybe
Yeah.
you guys don't, because I was always doing all this
That's
stuff.
not bad.
You know, these are going to get used eventually, right?
Yeah, you guys keep your meat hooks off.
Right?
This was actually a really cool photograph that I took in New York City. So that was one.
Yeah,
It was
wow.
a
That's
possibility.
crazy that you actually took that. That's so cool.
And then different variations of it.
So were you just leaning out of the van shooting up?
Yeah. Yes.
It's insane.
Yeah, she was
That's how I-
shooting up in New York.
Got it.
Whoa.
Nice.
And then,
Trying to
for
give us some
instance,
punk
like,
rock credibility.
Yep.
in Sound Mind, I found the original Rorschach. See, here it is. I just folded this and dripped some paint on it, and there it is.
Oh, so that's
great.
the actual paint on a piece of paper.
Yeah,
Wow, you should
Dang.
frame that.
Right.
I know.
They don't
There's
like
a whole bunch of them.
That's cool.
We remember we did like a whole bunch of these. And
Yep.
anyways, I just thought that was kind of a cool. I have all of these notebooks from all of the albums, and I can look back at them and I see some of these ideas, and I'm like, oh wow, that was some really cool stuff. And
Nice.
that's
You
my
should-
show and tell. Okay.
You gotta. Well, first of all, you gotta sign and frame that the Sound Mind album cover as the original, and then you know, when things get really bad, we can auction it off.
There you go. Always looking after the bottom line.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
If
cool.
Devin was here, he would say the same thing.
Yep.
Awesome. That's
And
cool stuff.
The Sound Mind notebook is filled with all kinds of. You remember that was a tough one. That I was going through a really tough period in my life right then, and I couldn't come up with anything. And I remember the concept of no concept.
Nice.
It was just an empty white room. That was my concept. No concept. Sometimes
also
that's the way
one-
it goes. Huh?
I remember one where we had I don't know if we should give all this stuff away because we might use it someday, but you know, who's paying attention, right? I remember a really cool picture. I think it was of a rhinoceros looking out at the ocean.
Oh yeah, that
Yep.
was cool. We all
I don't
loved
have
that.
that was not my photography or anything, but there's that one.
Yeah, we loved that. It just
What were we going to call it? Oh, no concept. Yeah. Because
Like
it's almost
what the
like he's
guy
going to
has-
go swimming.
yeah. That was cool.
That's we still
Here's
might have to
one.
use that.
Another cool Sound Mind. This was a possible Sound Mind. This was still the Rorschach, but
Hmm.
that was a cool one.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's my show and tell. The notebooks of the design concepts and how they, it's a cool process.
It's cool to see those. That was. I feel like I had forgotten some of that too.
Yeah, you should look through them sometime and it's pretty trippy. Yeah, especially
Do you
you
guys
know when
feel a
you're
little bit like this is romper room sometimes?
sorry.
No, I don't say sorry. No, I'm
I
just
need a-
saying it.
I need a mirror and then it go. I see Sam and
I see-
Mary and
I see Larry
Joseph
and Scott and
Larry.
John and
Hi,
Chuck.
Glenn.
I'm actually looking at real names.
So am I.
I'm a drummer. Everything's romper room.
Let me look through a few more of these questions. I've got some other stuff too, but
While you're looking, I'll say it's interesting to me how much, Jen, you're just sort of everything visually represented ends up being yours. Even our notes on the demos as we do them, like you'll start making notes about the form of the song, and then you'll just go, oh, here's something I was making, and you'll send them to us, and that way we'll have the same vocabulary for the song.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and it's interesting, just even stuff that seems trivial, my visuals of the process are things that come from your visual brain.
Or all my scribbly handwriting.
Yeah. And it's also funny how long it takes us by the time you've got songs together, it's like those songs are song 3 and song 5 and song 6
Yes.
for about a month and a half past when you have names for them. You just can't break out of.
Yeah, you can't. To this day, sometimes when I'm looking through my notes to try to find something, I'm like song 6, and then you do start attaching the names and you lose that part of it. But during the recording process, it's still song 2, or the working title will be like the Rush song or the Yes song, whatever it is.
You're right. That's even harder to break free from when you have a working title that you're not going to use, but it becomes what you call it. And then
you remember the Falcon and the Falcor and the Snow.
Yes.
What was that one? Chopin.
And the Chopin. Yeah.
Falcor and the Chopin.
Such an awkward jumble of puns, and then we couldn't call it anything else.
Yeah, actually, Tom was requesting Thin Air last night. That's the song.
That became Thin Air, yes. Falcor and the Chopin was the working title for that one.
You know what I would? Well, I don't. This is pretty stupid, but whenever I think of Thin Air, when we first started traveling a fair amount and doing radio shows, and Travis, sometimes you would play the tracks on his show because we can't all like play, but yeah. And then Jen, we'd all be sitting around with mics and the big cans and at a table, and then Travis would be performing. I don't know why I think this is so funny, but it was either a Santa Barbara or it was Vicky's show. I can't remember which, but you were doing Thin Air, and Thin Air, for everybody listening, is just majestic and epic and long sustained notes. It's like da 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 da. And so Jen and I are sitting there, and Travis is under all the pressure, but you can't hear anything except the strings in the room because it's direct. So Travis sitting there, just putting out everything he can. And all you hear is like blink, 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 and he's like going, and he's going, and then so that's funny by itself. And then Jen and I start laughing like we're in school and going to get in trouble.
It was like that. Like you're not hearing anything,
but it wasn't even licks. It was like bing. But on the audio, it was like and so and then we started
grunting his way through it.
I just remember poor Travis, like all of the pressure of the whole show on his shoulders, and I could not stop laughing, like silently trying not to let him see me laughing, and we're just a foot and a half away from the poor guy. Anyway, I don't know why I thought that was
it's funny because in here when I'm doing those solo shows, like the thing is, we've talked about this with other friends of ours who are, prominent musicians, the noises that you make when you're struggling through something, just even when you're playing it well, but physically, some of this stuff is a lot, you're tensing up your whole body to play something with your fingers. I know that's probably people would say you're not supposed to do that, but you do. And I mean, my stomach is super tight usually when I'm playing really hard stuff. It's like I'm tensing up. I'm trying to relax my fingers by tightening up the rest of my body almost. It's like a weird, this weird parallel. But so you'll be playing like some crazy 30-second note run that's just like, and you're going, when you're doing that. But nobody hears that unless they're in a quiet room with you and you're wearing headphones, right?
Yeah.
I remember I was talking to LaRue about this, and he he'll sing stuff to himself. And I never realized that. I always thought he just like, had kind of like this OCD thing going on. And it's like, no, he's like mouthing the music in his head, and it, so that he'll remember it on his bass. It's like we've had some interesting conversations about that.
Was Oscar Peterson the piano player? Is that he was this great, really busy. I hope I'm not saying something dumb, but he was this really great, super busy jazz pianist, and you'd hear, and it was just amazingly articulate. And you'd hear live albums, and he's just like going, like growling and grunting.
Oh, Lionel Hampton's the most famous one, right?
Yeah, sure.
He'd just be like, he'd be playing the vibes, and if there was a mic to pick him up, just hilarious.
It was pretty good. John Hartnett had a cat named Shetty Lee. Nice.
Oh, nice.
Let's see. Sorry. I'm trying to decide on a question. Nicholas is asking Jen about meeting Geddy Lee. Any details to share about that? As far as, I mean, I could tell the story of how we got there. I think I might have told that before, but.
No, my details for that moment was I was just sweating a whole lot. And that's all I remember, basically. Sweating a whole lot and telling him, you're my favorite bass player. and that was about it. So
I'll see if I can find that picture before we go. So the story behind that is that we were tooling around in our van on tour with instruments for Alex and Getty that we had basically, this is right when we first started getting any decent endorsement deals. They were coming back after the long hiatus after, Neil had taken off because of his family tragedies. And so it was like 2001 and we were just starting to get attention. And so when you first started getting attention like that from endorsers, you start pulling favors on tickets and backstage passes because you're a geeky kid and you're like, this guy can get me into that show. And that still goes on today on a level if there's something that you really want to see. But for the most part, we've made friends with all the people we want to see, which is another magical thing about this whole thing. But going back to the Rush thing, I was like, I bet you I can get into get us into a Rush show. So Jen's birthday was coming up and I called her up and I was like, guess what I'm getting you for your birthday? And she goes, you're getting me into getting me into the Rush show? I said, I'm getting you backstage at the Rush show. And she's like, oh my God,
Right.
So what happened was our A&R guy gave us some instruments to take to those guys and got us in. And the guitar tech for Alex at the time was also Steve Lukather's guitar tech. And we knew Steve Lukather a little bit at that time. So we were tooling around doing gigs as Travis Larson Band in these little dives, and we had instruments for Rush in the back of our van for like a week. And we got there and drove right in, had our names on the list, parked next to the buses, got out, looked around like, holy crap, we're actually here. And then I've said this many times, but going back to lessons learned in the industry, Jen and I specifically, we've been with Dale to a lot of stuff, but Jen and I have been to a lot of stuff together just because we're kind of, we end up going as a duo to a lot of things. It's kind of like Rush, where Dale's the new guy and we don't let him in on everything. But no, the truth is, Dale's
too busy reading.
Dale's always
reading books.
Dale's always busy, much like this week when you're waiting for footage for the next song.
Oh my God, Travis, leave him alone.
But anyway, Jen and I, we tend to be like the mouthpieces for Travis Larson Band. So we go to stuff together, and we go to this thing, and we'd never seen a crew so well-mannered and quiet and respectful and happy to be working ever up to that point. And we'd been to some other shows, arena shows, in some of the same exact venues.
I was backstage at a Rush show with you guys. I think you might be talking about a show I was at.
Yeah. But there's
you were there because we were on the road.
Shows that you weren't at that weren't so much like that.
Yeah.
Where we were watching people, we thought it was going to come to blows. And these are highly respected bands.
Who was that, Travis?
I'm not going to say, but these are like big prog bands that everybody thinks everybody's so nice and everybody thinks they're so great and everything. And they were like, it was gnarly. It was such a horrific vibe. And we looked at that and we said, and Rush is our favorite band of all time. We said, okay, we can see how they run things. This is how we already run things, but as we start to grow and we start to work with more people, this is how we're always going to run things. Like there's none of that allowed. So now Jen just runs off into the bathroom. She doesn't scream at people. No, I'm kidding.
No, I just tour manage now and tell you all what
right,
to do.
exactly.
Yeah, now it's your job.
Right.
And run into the bathroom and exactly.
No, but seriously, we looked at that and we've always treated people as well as we can afford to treat them. Even people that deserve to not be treated as well as they were, we still maintain a cool vibe, and it's all about getting the show done and everybody's there for the same cause and all that. And that was Rush. That's what we learned watching that crew. I mean, we already inherently knew that, but you saw an example of it that was black and white between that and some other shows that we went to, close to that time, where we were just like, no way. Like, that's not even, I feel uncomfortable and I'm just like a hanger on right now,
Well, it's funny. It's a rare thing to watch people working and be able to sense from people at work that they're they feel lucky to be doing what they're doing. Like they're at work, they'd be forgiven for just being whatever, and then later going, yeah, I love my job. But everybody was just like, this is the greatest job ever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
that was the
Goober,
greatest show ever. Remember, we got to run back. I mean, we had all access. We could go backstage, and then they did close sound check. I remember that you weren't allowed. But at the show, you could run backstage. You could run to our 10th row seats. You could run back around. You just could run around. It was so cool. I remember when it was the Vapor Trail store. I remember when the fire went off and it was like, whoosh, and I was like, oh my God.
I was just going to say how hot that pyro was in Vapor Trails. And then reading Neil Peart talk about how he had to wear that asbestos hat because it was just too hot to sit right under. Yeah, that was nuts.
So crazy. I've got, I would have to transfer it, but maybe a show and tell could be some of our backstage footage from Rush Vapor Trails tour.
I know. Remember we were sneaking the camera? That was back when we had a VHS-C camera, and where Travis was like,
we do have, but we have footage that's cool to have. Like they did take us up on stage, and I've got close-ups of all the pedal boards and the keyboards and the drum set and walking around and the instruments and all that kind of stuff. When they said we'd like you to turn that off is when they were sound checking, and they said, we generally, our sound checks are very closed off and quiet, and we don't want any footage of that stuff. So
thanks,
Goober.
No, go ahead.
Somebody said Sweaty Lee, by the way, referencing how I was really sweaty meeting Getty. I was sweaty.
Sweaty meeting Getty.
Okay.
Boop, 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 boop.
Thanks, Boyd, for the breakdown of the Amora Circle. Like one of our many rocket scientist fans.
Thank you. Yes, I knew it. When Annika came out, I read it, knew it. Now that's all out the window. Things only stick for so long in this brain.
So Boyd, when I was in school studying engineering, I had my strengths and materials teacher was super angry, and the students would always be asking what they could bring for notes and what they could bring for calculators. And she would just, every time she would yell, she'd go, "You use absolutely nothing." It was just every time it was like Willy Wonka. You get nothing. And then when somebody would ask that, this is basically just me laughing with Boyd about this, but whenever somebody would come to class and ask that, she would just get more and more mad. It's like, you soft, lame, wannabe engineers. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Travis.
Two things. They're adding. We've got so much stuff we're gonna have to hold for next week. But Steve Harris, I think Steve Harris is telling me he crewed for Rush at Concord Pavilion.
Nice.
Cool.
Steve and Tom, of course, are moderators right now and have crewed for us many a time. And, Goober says, what happened to the old van? How many miles did it have? Okay, so the old black van, the Death Star, we had.
Wait, you have to tell. We need to tell the whole van story really quick. So I'll tell my little part. Yep. One of the very first cars, the very first car I kind of bought with my own money, as it were, because your parents always just like, or you somehow get hand-me-downs, right? I had hand-me-down cars forever. Finally, the very first car I bought with my own money was a 91 Chevy Camaro. It was a bitchin' Camaro.
It was the last of the original, like the cool design before they started making them look really stupid, and now they're making them look cool again. But
bitchin' Camaro.
And that was bitchin' Camaro. I ran over my neighbor, and that was right when we met Dale. Remember, because Dale got in the back of my bitchin' Camaro and was eating rice, and I was like, oh my God. But anyways, it was
spotless. It was black. It was beautiful. It had silver mags. I loved it.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I loved it too. Anyways, that was at the point we got Dale, and we knew that this was the thing. And I was like, well, Dale's the man, and this band is gonna do something, and I need to sell this car and get a van. So we sold the bitchin' Camaro and got the white Chevy. I don't even remember what year that thing was. It was an 80
Chevy, 81 Chevy 3/4 ton cargo van with a V8.
I loved that van too. But anyway, so that van served us really, really well for a lot of years until the time we were playing the Roxy and it wouldn't make it up those hills in Hollywood. And remember, it was smoking. And then
it was like
we
white
were driving,
smoke, burning oil.
Yeah, and we were driving back in the thing with the thing on the window. What's that
The
called?
heater core blew.
Heater
That's
core
right.
blew, and a cop pulled us over, and it was awful. Anyways, that van got put to rest. I loved that van. And then the first Death Star came along. Okay, so there you go, Travis.
Yeah. So so first of all, the white van. There's been 3 Death Stars. We're on number 3, and the third one, of course, we feel very, very professional now. I mean, it is glorious. I drove it to Jen's house to cut the tree down with Kip today, and while we're standing outside looking, like getting ready to leave, I look and Kip hadn't seen the van since we were on tour, and he's like, "Man, that's a big van." I look at that van and I still just like in awe because for so many years. So to add to your story about the white van, Jen, on Dale's behalf, there was 2 seats in it.
Oh yeah, Dale.
So
Sorry,
Dale
Dale.
used to have a folding canvas chair from Thrifties,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a beach chair, and he would
And
sit
then
on that, and then behind him we would stack the wall of
The
speaker
wall of
cabs.
gear.
yeah, we put Trav's 2 4x12s as the containment wall, and then if somebody had to stop quickly, I would instantly put my foot on the console and push back into those so that nothing came flying forward. And you could only stack so high because you didn't want it toppling forward. Yeah, that was
You're
pretty
lucky
crazy.
to be alive.
Yeah. And it's one of those things for the console, like the circular console of a van. It's all like plastic vinyl, and it's too hot, and your leg gets against it. And
Yeah.
that was pretty funny. The other thing, I don't know why I was gonna say, well, this doesn't even matter. But I remember that night we got pulled over, and I'm like, I had a rotator cuff issue. I remember another part of that story where it was super dark night for some reason. I mean,
It was. Yeah.
and yeah, something about it was extra dark. Meanwhile, visibility's not great because there's ethylene glycol coming. There's this coolant coming up out of the leaky heater core on the
I
windshield.
think it was raining too, or just like misting really hard.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah. So outside you'd use the wipers, and then if it didn't clear,
cold and foggy,
and then if it didn't clear up, I would wipe the windshield in front of you from the coolant getting up there. But that's my rotator cuff, so I was getting fatigued. And then when you got pulled over, I remember you're like, "Oh, great, crap!" And we're all just kind of anxious from how weird everything was already. And then Jen's looking for the registration, and I think I noticed you weren't strapped in, so I just reached way across, and I just remember trying to get you strapped in, and you looking for registration. Go, just get it on me. Don't let this guy come up and me not be strapped.
Why was I not wearing my seatbelt?
I don't know. You were probably
for the days, man.
Well, I bet you were probably
when I used to drive.
Yeah, I bet it was you leaning forward to clean off the windshield that you weren't
That's
strapped in. That's probably why.
Yep. That's
right. But I remember the guy is pulling up right behind us, and it looks like I got you on a headlock, like through a silhouette of the window.
Here's the thing, though. Our stuff, like in the dark, everybody looked so situated. There was absolutely no questioning the fact that Dale was sitting on a beach chair in front of a ton of gear.
Yeah,
that's true.
Like the cop never mentioned it. It was like he didn't even look.
Nope.
He basically just wanted to make sure everyone was sober.
Yeah.
And then he let us go. But I remember Jen being totally
sure why we got pulled over. Was I speeding or something, or was it just the swerving from trying to clean the window?
I think you were pushing it because we were trying to get home because we left the Roxy. It was just going up the 405 grade coming over to 101. And so we were still fresh in LA. We weren't even barely out of LA. And I think you were booking because you were like, we got to get home, especially with this coolant thing leaking.
Yeah.
We don't want to inhale this for more than 3 hours.
Boring information ever.
Right.
Boring stories.
Anyway,
so
the white Death Star, like you mentioned, we were on a super grade trying to pull up on Sunset, I think, or whatever it was. And you're at a stop sign on the grade, and you went to push the gas and it just wouldn't move because it was so overloaded, and it just went, and then it kind of started barely moving. But it was like, that's when you and I knew.
Yeah.
Right. So here's the thing. Here's the addition to that. The very last gig that the 81 Chevy Death Star played was Ted Nugent Arena Show. Now, we had bought the black Ford E350, which was a full 1-ton with a V10 engine. we had bought that, but we hadn't had time to modify it. We were literally already loaded up for shows that week. So we just parked it and we used the old van, and we had to get through the last show was the Ted Nugent show. And then we brought it back, and then we spent a week, every time we get one of these, my brother and I dig into them, and, so we'll modify it all. We'll insulate it. We'll put in a cage, all that stuff. And this was the first van that we really did that in on a proper level. We took the bench seat out of our old van. I saw Linnea last night, by the way, on the viewers for last night's show. We sold the minivan that we pulled that seat out to John and Linnea, who are friends of ours here on the Central Coast that I used to work with. Jen and I used to work with at a video store we worked at. We sold the minivan. They were nice enough to buy it without the bench seat in the back.
Without a seat in it.
And we bolted that bench seat into the Ford E350, which was the Death Star from 2001 until like 2 years ago.
Dave Martone.
Yeah.
Now,
Hey, Dave.
to answer Goober's question.
And Dave Martone has been in the Death Star.
Yeah.
Right.
When he-
Lots of people were in the Death Star.
Right.
Now, the Death Star had a real low ceiling, though. We had insulated it and everything. So the ceiling was like here, and it was really quiet and cush. But in the back, there were no windows because it was a full cargo van. So Dale would ride on a bench seat in the back, but it was like being in a chamber.
Yeah. And some people didn't like that. I remember Chris and Doug were like, I'm not riding in the no windows. And I remember I was skeptical about getting something with windows. Like what's the movie? Shawshank Redemption. They talked about the guy being institutionalized. He just couldn't handle freedom. I was just sort of like, I don't know if I can handle sunlight. I'm not ready for that. But it turned out to be okay. But I was skeptical about being able to see outside.
Oh, Dave says booze under the seat.
It's the one thing he remembers. Oh God.
That was you, Dave.
I remember playing Dave in chess on his computer. That's funny.
Well, I'm going to throw Dave under the bus because I don't want to throw you under the bus. I'll get in trouble with you. But if you're going to throw yourself under the bus, whatever. I don't drink because I am a responsible human being that gets us from gig to gig safely.
That means we can drink. That means we can drink more because Travis is the ultimate designated driver.
Right. But let me say that to answer Goober's question for the eighth time.
What was the question? Anyway?
Yeah, the question was what happened to the old van. So we sold the old Death Star 2 years ago to Chad Land, who is a local musician here. He bought it. He used it, continued to use it. He actually fixed it had a blown spark plug cylinder or whatever.
They just blew the spark plug.
Yeah, but it was one of those things where you needed to do a recoil and it had already been done, so they couldn't do it again. So he found a friend of his that was able to retap it and fix it. But it was one of those things you couldn't get a service department to do it.
I forget if we've told the story of that. But anyway, go ahead.
So he put it back on the road, and the Death Star is alive and well. And then he just sold it to another musician. And he told me that he told me, don't worry, she's in good care. She'll be taken care of. So, and then, so this was a week before the first Andy Timmons tour, just to clarify. So Jen and I, we hadn't been on tour since like a real tour of North America since we had gone out with the Aristocrats 2015. We'd done some West Coast stuff, but it was time for another North American tour. And this was on Annika, which came out actually in 2016 now. Right? So we were about to tour in Annika. We were about to do half of that with Andy Timmons. And we looked at each other and we're like, we're not taking this van on the road again for something of that caliber. Like, we can't trust it. Other people are going to have to trust it. I think Mike Keneally was also on part of that tour.
Yes.
Like we were jumping, from guy to guy. So we toured all of North America. And then for like 3 weeks, we had Andy Timmons. For 2 weeks, we had Mike Keneally, and other people would jump on the tour. So we didn't want to take a van out that we didn't 100% trust. So we went down to fam vans in Orange County, California. And just completely just bonsai, let's drive down there and get a van. And we got a new, what used to be, it's basically exactly like the previous Death Star, except it was a handicap van. So it has a high roof and we gutted it, and we put in cages and seats and all this stuff. And now you can almost stand up in it. It's got a foot more leg room. It's amazing. We put 12-volt ports everywhere. It's like a beautiful, beautiful thing that is just sitting in the driveway right now with the birds crapping on it.
It's not a V10 though.
Not a V10, but it gets amazing gas mileage.
That's
compared
true.
to-
Better gas
Yeah.
mileage.
We can
Yeah,
go
like
slow up the hill.
4 miles to the gallon better.
Huh.
Yeah.
Did you
And at
guys
those low
clock that on
mileages,
the
that's a
last
higher
tour?
percentage. What's
What's
that?
that, Jen?
Did you guys figure out the gas mileage on the last tour?
It was 14.
14.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which is still compared to 10.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's
at
big.
those low numbers, 4 miles a gallon is a big percentage.
Glenn says one of your vans had a problem with TLB plate in Raleigh.
Oh gosh.
Right. So that was the tour. That was the tour before last, the one before the Aristocrats tour. That was just so we had an alternator go out in the new improved Death Star in San Francisco on that same tour. We took it to a garage. They put the wrong alternator in. It made it to the East Coast, and then in Raleigh, we Dale and I are driving through the rain. Jen was actually in a separate vehicle for part of that tour. And we literally were like looking at the battery gauge getting lower and the gas gauge getting lower, and you couldn't turn the van off because you wouldn't have been able to restart it.
And from the previous failure, we knew exactly the story. We had the little thing plugged in to interface with the van's computer, and I was looking at an app, and we knew what
OBPC.
voltage. Yeah, and we knew what voltage
It was going to die.
It was going to die, and we were in a not pitch dark, but it was daytime. But it was a thunderstorm that was so dark you needed to turn on your lights
And the windshield wipers.
and you needed windshield wipers, and we were going to use neither because we knew exactly. We were like 2/10 above. It was like a bad action movie or a suspense movie, and we were driving through a dark thunderstorm in Raleigh, like with no windshield wipers, no lights, hoping not to get pulled over for not paying attention to those laws. And yeah, we literally just almost, I don't know if we were coasting when we got there or not, but it was like that.
It was, yeah,
Werner
we
says-
literally pulled it.
Sorry, Werner says Danville. You broke down in
yes.
Danville, and I'm going to
That's
say
true.
we did coast into Danville, and that was when we had the first alternator.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
We coasted into the Black Bear parking
The
lot.
Yeah,
Black
we
Bear
were
Diner.
driving 2 a.m. after a gig. We were driving through the Bay Area, and we roll off an off ramp and roll into a Black Bear Diner parking lot with no power, no lights, no steering. Everything died, and then luckily we were just downhill. And then Werner came and got us, and we left the van there till the next day and had it towed. Then when we got to the East Coast, we were driving from Canada to North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
And, in one day, and that was the drive where it started to go bad again, and that's when it started pouring on us. And we got to that gig, we had to do a gig again.
Yeah.
And
while we're setting up, you're figuring out where we can get it to after the show to get to the next day.
We're like researching garages. Dale's calling people. We're like, how late are you guys open? And then it's like, okay, you're not going to be open. It's going to be 2 a.m. If we can get the van to your garage, how do we leave you a key?
Yeah.
All that stuff.
Yep.
Just ridiculous. But that, in defense of the van, when we got the van, it was about 5 years old. It's the original alternator needed to be replaced. That's okay. But the garage that screwed us is the reason that we had so much trouble. And that's the trouble that we had when you saw us in Raleigh.
Speaking of breakdowns, and this is short.
Drag.
I know it's getting late and this is a short story, but
we got to get
like
going.
there was a breakdown we had. I forget if it was in New Mexico. I know Larry Mitchell was doing a gig with us. And anyway, the reason I remember this is how funny it is when the huge tow truck, instead of towing, you know how they'll for the listeners, they'll drag your truck up onto the back of another truck, right? Yeah. But our van with all its gear in it was so heavy that the truck trying to drag ours in and lift it up. Instead, the nose of the truck did a wheelie and came off the ground, and we have a picture of that.
I have pictures of that, yes.
Our van stubbornly staying still, and the tow truck
being
just
like,
wheeling.
whoop.
And then the second gratifying part, not gratifying, but funny part of that is a guy who was trying, I don't know if it's the same guy, but somebody was trying to get that truck off of, oh no, he tried to get it off of the tow truck. And as he let it down, the lift gate on the back gouged about 6 inches of asphalt out of the parking lot. And we're all looking around like, property manager's going to come around here. And I don't know who's in trouble on this one.
Yeah. I was just going to say, Larry Dickey said, didn't the black van have a lift gate? Yes, it did.
Yeah.
But the beauty is that because we went to Mark Base and DV Mark, we don't need it anymore.
Yeah. Nope. Right.
That's a true story. That's absolutely the deal. It's all neodymium speakers. The lift gate would be more trouble than it's worth at this point. When we took Beller's rig out, we took Gino with us. He was our lift gate.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'll tell you stories about trying to get into the Monterey gigs with your 21 space rack that none of us could lift and wheeling everything down the parking structure.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So like there's a there's a rolling rack in front of you that weighs more than you do, and you're just trying to stop it from going, and it's going down 3 stories of a parking structure.
Yeah, that was fun. All right, man. We need to wrap this up because it's getting late, and Travis still needs to announce the special guest. We can tell road stories for we'll make that another segment.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing because we never tell road stories and we don't tell enough.
Yeah,
I know.
The van diaries.
Okay. Yes, and let me also mention. I mentioned. I was going to say this last time and I forgot. I just did a thing called Gigs and Gear or Gear and Gigs podcast, where I talk for like another 2.5 hours. And so if anybody is interested in checking that out, before we finish here, I'll find the link real quick and I'll share that in this feed. I also want to thank everybody who hung out last night. I know I do that a lot, but honestly, it really means a lot to us that you guys show us so much warmth, and it's completely amazing to me how much everybody is happy to see each other as much as they interact with us or me doing the live performance feeds. So
thank you, everybody. Good night, Larry. And if we're not, sometimes I feel bad that we're not responding to specific stuff, but it just thank you, everybody. And
we see more than we talk about.
We're going to get some of those questions next week because I have a whole list of them still.
And we see more than we talk about, so thanks.
Yeah,
just when people are like saying hi and good night and stuff.
Yep.
Just
here's the link to that podcast. I just put that in the feed just so everyone can check that out. So next week on Outside the Inn, we're not going to do a special secret guest like we did with our friend Dave Martone, who's out there right now, or Brian Beller. We're going to just tell you who it is because you want to hang out with us. It's our good friend
Travis
from Frank Zappa fame and an amazing, amazing good guy. And just we love him so much. Mike Keneally is going to come hang out with us next week.
Cool.
So that is going to be a lot of fun. And the criteria to be on here is that you have had to have done time with TLB, and Mike has done his fair share of time with TLB, meaning like on the road time, like finding food, playing gigs, setting up gear, dealing with problems. And we have dealt with our share of craziness with Mike. And I'm sure we'll talk about New York and all that kind of stuff. Other than that, what else am I forgetting? Oh, tip jars, support links, all that kind of stuff. We're all unemployed right now, with the exception of being able to do stuff for you guys. So I know everybody's in a hard spot, but if you are doing okay and you are anxious to maybe try and help support us continue doing what we're doing and stay in these rooms that we're sitting in, please check out the tip jar, check out the live stream or the streaming music links in the description of this webcast, the physical media, CDs, DVDs, t-shirts, all that kind of stuff. And we keep pondering some other ideas for this show. We're not going to next week with Mike. I don't think we'll get too in depth, but I have some more kooky ideas that I might get into as we go, for like giveaways, stuff like that. Those kind of things. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We will see you next
everybody.
Saturday.
See you next Saturday.
And go ahead and play us up.